Hello, I'm Leon Blackman, and welcome to this Eurovision 2025 preview. And we're joined by the expert, the doctor himself, Dr. Eurovision Paul Jordan. Hi, Paul. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Leon. Thanks for having me.
You have a PhD in Eurovision. Could you please tell us how you came around to getting this?
So, I was at university in the early 2000s and I was writing my undergrad dissertation on the history of Eurovision. And it coincided with a time when Eurovision was really changing. It was shortly after Ukraine had won and it became quite politicized with the so-called Orange Revolution that they had. And my supervisor or tutor at the time suggested I might want to apply for a PhD and explore these issues further. Did that and then had a chance meeting with a journalist a few years ago, and she suggested that I call myself Dr. Eurovision and make a little bit more out of the PhD and sell myself as a kind of pundit. And that then eventually went to lead on to a job on Eurovision itself as part of their communications team. So kind of almost came full circle.
And you've made numerous TV appearances and other media obligations now. Do you feel like you're part and the epicenter of Eurovision?
I guess so. I mean, it's a great pleasure and a privilege to be, in this position, talking about something that I love, talking about something which really, in some ways, changed my life. I owe developments in my career to Eurovision. So yeah, and it's one of those things where. I guess I'm able to talk from different perspectives, having been a fan ever since I was a little boy to then actually working behind the scenes. You see a real different side to the contest. Some of it great and really interesting and exciting, and some of it, if I'm honest, quite stressful. It was a very big event, and I learned loads during my time there. But yeah, it's nice now just to watch it on TV again and not have to kind of worry about working on it anymore.
And this is a betting preview, as you know, and Eurovision is a huge event for us. It's always in our top 10 betting events of the year on oddschecker. What's your history like with Eurovision? Do you like to have a bet every year?
Yep, so I've been betting on it for more than 20 years now. Started back in 2004. I remember it quite vividly because I'd actually won big time. I was a student and I watched all the songs in one go. And Ukraine for me was the one that stood out, and it had odds of 25 to 1. I whacked a fiver on it each way. And yeah, for a student, that was a lot of money to win. And in 2006, I did the same thing again and I struck gold when Finland won for the very first time. So now I bet, and I think one of the challenges I have is I often think I'll just shove a couple of quid on this song each way and then end up having far too many bets on the go. But that's where I like the combination betting that you can bet on various different things, either songs qualifying from the semi-finals or not, top 10 in the grand final, bottom five, top five. And some of those kind of combination bets can be really quite fruitful. So that's what I've been doing for the past few years. And yeah, it's great fun. And it gives the contest a bit of a different dynamic as well, because you're not only interested in the song which is your favorite, you're also interested in the one which is going to bring you the big bucks.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. I mean, I got into it a couple of years ago and we were watching it with all my friends at uni and we had a little bet and it certainly makes it a bit more interesting and listening to experts like yourself, we get that serious insight to help us along the way. Um, and looking at the top of the betting for this year, we've got Sweden and Austria who are quite clear ahead of the pack at 2 to 1 and 9 to 4 favourites. Um, and then you've got France and Israel 7 to 1 and 12 to 1, and then 18 bar those at bigger prices. Why is it that Sweden and Austria are such big favourites compared to the rest of the field this year?
Well, I think both offer something very different. So Sweden's song is a bit of a novelty song. It's about a group of guys going to a sauna. It's got a quirky dance routine. It's had a lot of videos on social media, people doing impressions. So it's really quirky, really catchy, really well performed. And Sweden just get Eurovision. They do well nearly every year. They've won it 7 times. They're looking for that eighth victory. And I think they could go close this year. Austria is very different. It's a kind of falsetto operatic ballad, which changes sort of tempo later on. And it's quite reminiscent of Switzerland's winning song from last year. That I think is going to do very well with the juries. Be interesting to see how, if it gets those all-important public votes as well. But I think certainly Sweden has the public vote in the bag. So that's where it's going to be interesting to see. It could well be like in other years that something sort of sneaks through the middle. So in 2019 and in 2016, Netherlands and Ukraine respectively won, despite not winning the public or the jury vote, but they got enough to win overall. So yeah, that could be an interesting scenario as well. And if that's the case, it could well be something that we're not quite looking at just now. You only really get a sense when you see the live performances when the rehearsals start, and that can be the real game changer. And that happened in 2014. No one really was thinking about Austria, Conchita Wurst, the bearded drag queen, before the live shows. I think I got Austria at 25-1. It was a bit of a dark horse. And then once rehearsals started and after the semi-finals, it was very clear that there was something going on with that song and that performance. And the rest is history.
And with those two, like Sweden and Austria, at those kind of prices, are those kind of odds something that you want to take, or at 2-1 and 9-4? Are you looking at, is that too short a price to be backing a winner?
Yeah, I think if you're looking for something, where you can earn a bit of money, make a bit of money, I think you're probably going to look at other bets. So different combinations, for example. So in 2023, Sweden won the contest. The odds for Sweden weren't amazing, but there were different odds for guessing, the top five and the bottom five. And so that year I put on a bet where I bet that Finland and Sweden would be top five and Germany and, sorry, UK would be bottom five. And that was quite good. I think that was 10-1. So I was able to make a bit of money that way. So it's definitely worth looking at the different combinations. But yeah, certainly I think for an each way bet, Sweden's a sure thing. But it just means that you don't really get that much return on your initial bet. So interesting one, Austria as well. I'd say I'm not sure if the public will go for it, but certainly I think it is something the juries will. So you could always bet on some countries winning the jury vote or the public vote as well. There's loads of different combinations. There's literally anything if you look into it.
And when there's key dates throughout the calendar year that you like to have a bet and really influence what kind of countries you'd like to be backing for the song contest?
Normally, I look at when a song has been chosen. So the national selection season starts in kind of January, February, and runs until mid-March. And so each country tends to select its entry usually on the weekend. And normally, I then kind of go on and just see what the odds are. So this year, I think I got Austria when that song was released. So they didn't have a selection; they had an internal selection, I think. And I got them at 5-1. So as soon as the song is out, that's when is a good opportunity to just have a look. And then often things can change during the run up to the actual grand final. So the week of the semi-finals, that's when you see how the songs are performed. And again, it just depends on what stands out. Something you might not have seen before can just captivate the audience. So it's always worth having a look then at what potential dark horses there might be, songs which are coming across really well that they didn't in the preview section. And even these live events they have. So they have something called Eurovision in Concert in Amsterdam. They have the London Eurovision Party as well. And these are huge events where the singers actually perform live for the fans, and they take place every year, and you can actually see songs kind of gaining momentum from those types of events. But similarly, you can also see songs tumbling in the betting odds, and that happened to Belgium in 2017. They were a big favourite to win. Then the girl performed at some of these events. She was very, very nervous, and that's where the momentum seemed to kind of fall away from them. So there's always different points in the year where you can have a look at what you think is worth putting a bet on. But certainly the day before, when you know the lineup of the grand final, that's really the key moment, because then you can see the running order and you can see a song that maybe didn't stand out before really does. I guess that's why it's so exciting as well, because you can bet on so many different combinations, and you do have the juries as well as the public 50-50 each. And what the jury go for and what the public go for are sometimes very different.
Yeah, it'd be good to hear what the difference is, like what kind of acts the public would be betting on, and compared to maybe the juries, and what kind of acts grab attention from both of those parties.
Yeah, so the public tend to, I mean, it's a bit of a generalization, but they tend to go for more quirky songs. So this year there's a lot of novelty songs. And I think at a time when, the world feels a little bit chaotic, and unpredictable, I guess novelty songs are a bit of escapism, like Eurovision itself. And if anything, the pandemic taught us we need a bit of, light relief and a bit of escapism, and Eurovision offers that. So there are quite a few novelty songs this year. There's Sweden's one. Estonia, they've got a quirky song called Espresso Macchiato. It's got a very quirky dance routine. You've got Australia's entry with the Milkshake Man. There's all these quirky ones, which I think will get through because of the public vote in the semi-finals. When it comes to the juries, they tend to be more looking at technical singing ability, performance, things like that. So that's why North Macedonia in 2019 won the jury vote, and yet it didn't really do much with the public at all. So the juries tend to be a little bit more conservative. That said, they did have Finland in 2023 in their top 10, even though they didn't win overall. There's different betting combinations you can go for, but certainly the juries often favour ballads. And Switzerland last year only won because of the jury vote. I think they came fourth or fifth in the public vote. So it can really make or break a song as well. And the chances of winning, because it's 50-50, if it does so badly with the juries, you're never really going to have a massive chance of victory unless you had what we had in 2022 with Ukraine. And I think more or less every participating country, I think apart from two, gave Ukraine 12 points in the public vote. So that was unprecedented and that was overwhelming. And that was a very specific year. I think this year, because there are so many different styles of music, it feels quite open. Yes, Sweden and Austria are seen as the front runners, but that doesn't necessarily mean they'll win. It could be something which emerges in the next few weeks. And certainly as rehearsals take place, could be something that really takes us all by surprise, could even upset some people.
Yeah, and that's a good way to lead on to the dark horses and those countries at bigger prices. Because like you said, there's only three countries at the moment priced under 10-1 in Sweden, Austria, and France. And that to me, as a man who put bets on other sports, if I saw that kind of market in a horse race or in a football match, that's something that would be attractive to me to look for something further down the market at those bigger prices.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where. Sorry, I'll start again. Absolutely, and that's where, looking at what potentially could be a dark horse is a really good thing. You're looking at something which takes you by surprise. It has an element of surprise, something a little bit different, and that's happened a few times over the past few years. Conchita Wurst, the drag queen from Austria in 2014, wasn't really seen as a front runner until really the rehearsals began. And initially, I think I got Austria at 25-1, so it was a very lucrative win for me. But yeah, certainly looking at what potentially could be either each way or top 10 is a really good way of doing it. And you could also have, as I say, these combination votes. So in 2023, I had Belgium and Australia in the top 10. Now, beforehand, I didn't really think much of them, but then after I saw them in the semi-finals, I went on, I put on a bet, and I think I only had 3-1 on Australia being in the top 10. But that's where it all adds up though. You can have all those little bets that actually give you quite a good return on your investment. And as I say, I've had money on top five, bottom five, qualifier, non-qualifier. And some countries, tend to always do very well with the public vote. You can almost guarantee that, Russia would have always qualified when they took part, apart from one year. Ukraine have a very solid public vote. When Turkey took part, for example, you knew that Turkish people across Europe would be voting for them, particularly in Germany. That was very obvious when all the Turks used to vote for Turkey, and Germany most years would give Turkey 12 points. So there are certain things that give you a bit of certainty, but then there are the other ones, and it's tapping into that unpredictable element of it, and that's where the money's to be made.
And looking ahead to the semi-finals, I've got the markets here in front of me. We obviously don't have the to be qualified from the semi-finals markets live yet. We imagine those will go live closer to the time. Um, but what countries can you see now as that could be a good pick out to qualify from those semi-finals? There might be one at a bigger price.
Yeah, so I think possibly to qualify, if we're looking at the different semi-finals, I think Ireland is probably going to be a good bet. The overall odds for Ireland aren't great, but they've in their semi-final they've got the UK voting. Ireland's also going to get some votes from Norway as well because the singer is actually from there. I think Norway are actually participating in the other semi-final though, but Sweden are in that semi-final. So I think bets like that are probably quite good. Israel is probably going to be a qualifier. They had a very strong public vote last year, and I think their song is a good song this year, and I think they'll still have that public vote. The ones where it is a little bit borderline are countries like Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan used to do very, very well, and the past sort of 10 years have really their public vote has collapsed. Now there are all sorts of rumors as to what that could be. There were allegations of vote rigging and cheating going on. Who might possibly comment on that? But it is interesting that when they tightened up the rules, Azerbaijan's fortunes changed, but they could be worth a bet, to either qualify or in some cases not qualify. Iceland, could that be a dark horse, or could it be a non-qualifier? It's a real, you sort of have to hedge your bets literally, and to try and sort of see where the little surprises could be. In a year where there are lots of novelty acts, could some of those cancel each other out as well? And a lot of it depends on the running order, the staging, and so much of Eurovision is also about how songs are staged. And I think that's why Portugal won by such a landslide in 2017. It was a very, very quiet, very, very subtle song, which hadn't really been picked up on until those live performances. And it was so different, so unique, it really stood out in a way that it didn't in the running order or the previews. So always worth looking at how something comes across on stage. Likely, like as well, you've got other countries or performers who perhaps haven't got a very good song, but my goodness, they perform it really well. And that can happen as well. It happened in 2022. You had the Moldovan entry, which the arena just absolutely erupted and it got a huge public vote, even though the juries didn't go for it at all. So no one really saw that happening until that live performance on the night.
And you keep mentioning these rehearsals as a key marker for finding out whether they're going to do well on the night. What kind of dates are we looking at, or what kind of can Eurovision bettors look forward to as a key marker for these London or these Amsterdam rehearsals?
Well, the preview parties are taking place across the spring. So there's one in Madrid, there's one in London, one in Amsterdam. So they're often kind of mid-April. But what you see in May time is the actual live footage of the rehearsals. So you've got a recording that's released of each rehearsal on YouTube, so you can see how it's going to look, and you can just get a vibe for how something is coming across. And that's really in the week of rehearsals, in the run up to those two semi-finals. That's when you can really see what's worth betting on. And as I say, it's not always about the winner. It can be a combination. It can be looking at what is not qualifying. I think it's also an interesting one to do who you think is going to win with the public vote, and that's where I won some of my money last year. I had each way bets on Croatia and Switzerland, but I thought that Croatia last year would win the public vote, and they did by quite a long way. So that's where, some of the markets are quite good for giving you those unusual, quirky bets. And I think certainly even betting on bottom five is always good. Even you can even bet on UK scoring zero, which is something which happened in 2021. The UK got no public or jury votes, and I probably shouldn't admit it, but I won 50 quid by putting that bet on. So not very patriotic, but at least it paid for a round of drinks at the pub after.
Yeah, exactly. You got to put your expertise, you got to put pride aside. And that's a good segue into Great Britain. How do you assess our hopefuls this year?
I think the UK entry have the group are great. They're called Remember Monday. They can really sing. Their harmonies are really powerful. So I think the juries will like that. But I don't know if the song is strong enough. And quite often the UK has either a good song but bad staging or bad performance, or a bad song really well staged. So you need the three. You need the song, you need the singer, and you need the staging. Sam Ryder in 22 got that. We've never really had it since. Mae Muller had a great song in 2023, but not a great performance or staging. And last year, Ollie had quite risky staging, shall we say? But I just don't think his song was good enough. And I think we're in a similar position this year. I think it will get some jury votes, but I can't imagine we'll be top 10. I think we'll be very, very lucky to be top 15, if I'm honest. I really wish them all the best, but I just don't think the song is right for Eurovision. And Ireland's one is a really quirky one. There's very few kind of old-fashioned Europop songs, and this year's Irish entry is about a dog called Laika who went up into space, I think either in the 50s or the 60s, and unfortunately she died on her second trip to space. And it's all about the dog having a party in the sky. It's called Laika Party, and it's quite a nice little tribute to that poor old dog. But I'm not sure whether the subject matter might put people off, but it's certainly quite quirky and catchy, and it's got a bit of a hook as well.
And let's run through some of your predictions. Let's start with maybe two or three dark horses that you could foresee getting a top 10 finish or potentially even winning?
Yep, so I think there's a couple of potential dark horses. One that I'm thinking about is Estonia. It's a novelty song, and I think the juries it will do probably quite badly with, but I think it will get a lot of public votes. And when I first saw it in the selection, I just knew it was going to win. And it was that initial impacts that it had. And I think, bearing in mind most people are going to be watching the grand final for the first time. This is the first time they're going to be seeing the songs. A lot of people don't watch the semi-finals, etc. So I think it is about remembering that first impact. So they're definitely one that could do well. Netherlands as well, that could potentially definitely, I think, be top 10. It's called C'est la vie. It's quite a catchy song. It depends on how it's staged, but the video certainly looks very promising. And I think it will certainly get those jury votes in as well as some public ones. Australia, if they go for something a bit quirky, the Milkshake Man, it's called, and it reminds me a little bit of the Scissor Sisters, I should say. And that's going to, I think, get a mixture of public and jury votes. It seems to be very well performed. One that I'm thinking of that's really quite low in the betting odds is Denmark. I think the performance that she gave in the national selection, it's called Hallucination, wasn't very strong. And they're revamping the song, and apparently they're working on the staging. And I think if they get that right, they could be a shoe-in for a top 10. But at the minute, I think the betting odds for them winning overall are quite low. So it's worth keeping an eye on that top 10 market for Denmark.
Yeah, so the ones you've mentioned, you've got Netherlands currently, these are all outright to win. 18 to 1 Netherlands, 35 to 1 Estonia, 150 to 1 Australia, and Denmark 250 to 1. All those best odds on oddschecker. So some big prices there. And who do you think will win? Trying to put the odds aside, and you think will come out triumphing on the night?
So I think it is between Sweden and Austria, and I think it will be Sweden that triumphs. I think Austria will win the jury vote, Sweden will win the public vote, but I think they'll get enough overall. So I think if I was pushed between those two, it's going to be Sweden. I just can't see anything beating it. It feels like there's momentum there. It's very well staged. I keep seeing viral videos going around of people doing the dance routine, and they're quite a unknown group. They're a brand new group in Sweden, and they were very much the underdog in the national selection, and very much celebrated when they won. So I think it is Sweden's contest, but that doesn't mean that the other bets are all off. You could have something, as I say, which sneaks up. Certainly, I would put a couple of each way bets on as well. Certainly, Austria and Sweden each way, but then looking slightly outside the box, Netherlands each way is not beyond the realms of possibility either. So, yeah, and again, it also depends on the running order. The running order is decided on the Thursday evening after the second semi-final, and that's when you can really see what is coming towards the end of the contest. You don't always have to be towards the end of the running order to win, but it certainly does help, and it's overwhelmingly shown that the past few years the winner has been on later on.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. I wouldn't have thought that the running order would had played such a key part, but it is those ones at the end that really leave a mark on. I guess it's the freshest in the memory, isn't it, for those betting, for those voting.
Yeah, I think so. But also, I think a good song will win wherever it is, but they do have a bit more of an advantage. It is a long evening. People are partying, they're not necessarily paying attention, and it's something which grabs their attention for those 3 minutes. That's what's needed. Or it can be something which really stands out. Now, the running order is, I've learned about this when I was working on the contest. It's always about creating the best television show, mixing up different songs. If a singer's got the same color outfit on as the next singer, they tend to separate them just to make it a little bit different. Or if a song has a lot of props, they'll need more time to get the stage ready. So they move songs with props. They don't put them together. There are real practical reasons. Though sometimes I think people think there's a bit of a conspiracy behind the running order. It is about creating a good television show, but it does also allow you to see what is going to perhaps do well. But if you've got, a load of dance numbers and then a very quiet ballad coming after that, it stands out. Similarly, if you've got an up-tempo one after a load of quiet ones, then that will stand out too. So it's quite exciting to see that come together. And I think whilst people have criticized it and people do think it's lacking transparency, I think it does create a better television show. And you only have to look back at a couple of Eurovisions from 20 years ago when it was a random running order. And I think it was 2006. I mean, the first six songs were pretty dire. And I think people started to turn off. So they don't want that. They want people tuning in and picking up the phone and voting.
And you mentioned in the chat already that you like to put a little combination bet on. Uh, an accumulator, let's say on like the top five or somebody to finish in the bottom five. I know that's difficult to do as we stand because we don't know what the final order is looking like. But let's say if you had to put a combination on the top 10 or a top five right now, what kind of countries and accumulators would you be looking at?
Of course, we don't know the final running order for the grand final. We don't know what songs have qualified, but there are five or six, actually, including the host country, which are pre-qualified, of which the UK is one. Now, I've got a feeling that Germany, it's a dance song, but I don't see it doing well. I don't really see who's going to vote for it. So I wonder if that already is worth a bottom five bet. Germany, the past few years, haven't done all that well. So they're often, unfortunately, they're often, a good country to bet on for bottom five. So that's possibly one. But if a country like Iceland gets through, or Lithuania gets through, or Montenegro, they could be shoo-ins for a bottom five as well. So it's not always about the leaderboard. It's also worth looking at, as I say, the non-qualifiers, the top 10, the jury vote winner, the person who will come last. You can even bet on countries getting 0 points as well. So there's definite combinations for everyone. And it's always worth just doing that little bit of homework and just thinking, who's in that semi-final? If a country's in the semi-final with a lot of their neighbours, they do have a little bit of a boost. Similarly, in Scandinavia, those countries often know each other's singers. So Sweden would have a bit of an advantage, for example, if they're in the same semi-final as Norway or Denmark. That's only one set of votes, but it can make all the difference when it comes to qualifying. So yeah, that's what I think it keeps it exciting because not only are you looking at the songs, but you're also looking at potential victory in terms of betting, but also I guess people who go to the contest as well care about which song wins because that dictates where they're going for the holidays next May.
Yeah. And the UK, what would you predict? How do you predict us doing next week? Next month. We're currently 7-2 for a top 10 finish. Would you dissuade punters from that prize?
I wouldn't bet on top 10. It's really unfortunate. They're brilliant girls. I mean, they're great singers, but I just don't think the song is strong enough. I don't see it getting public votes. I think the juries will vote for them. I think they'll give them something, but I think they'll struggle to be in the top 15. So I think betting bottom five or bottom 10 is probably better, more lucrative than the other way around. As much as it pains me to say it, and I do genuinely wish them all the best, but I just don't think the song is strong enough in a lineup where there is a lot of quirky entries. This it doesn't feel like a song that has momentum to be top 10 at a minute. But then it depends on the staging and it depends on how they perform in those rehearsals.
And our Irish counterparts, would you, if you were going to have a match bet UK versus Ireland, would you say they'd do better or worse than us?
I think Ireland, if they qualify, will do worse than the UK. I think they're probably bottom five material potentially, just because I don't think the juries in the grand final will go for it. But I think they will qualify because it's purely public vote in the semi-finals. But if it gets through, then I think possibly bottom five. I think the UK will be saved by the jury vote in the grand final. I don't think the juries will go for Ireland. But I have been wrong before.
Yeah, we all get it wrong sometimes. But you sound like you've got your track record is good for us. And during the week of Eurovision or the leading up to it, do you post across your socials any tips or insights, or is there some place that what viewers can find you to get these insights up close and personal in the week of?
Normally on Twitter, yeah, I'm posting my commentary there. Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter X. Normally during the
It's still
semi,
Twitter.
yeah, normally in the semi-finals, there's a lot of discussion, and that's where it's interesting that social media has almost become a second screen, really. And that's what I love about it. It's the kind of live moment, the excitement. So yeah, I'll be watching those rehearsal clips when they come out, and then yeah, sitting down and enjoying the semi-finals. And there's usually an upset. There's a country that gets through that you don't see happening. A lot of people are saying Albania's being performed very well when they've seen them performing live. So that could well be a lucrative bet as well. There's loads of combinations. I guess I'm going to have to, at this stage, have a bit of a spreadsheet so I can keep track of everything.
Yeah, all us bettors are accustomed to the spreadsheet. Well, thanks for joining us, Paul. I'm sure we'll be in touch again to get your insights closer to the time. But that was very insightful for me as just a casual fan to hear.
You're welcome. And yeah, good luck, everyone, placing your bets. May the best song win.